because I mean, music-wise, the Rolling Stones are a rock and roll band.
Sure.
Elvis Presley is a rock and roll artist.
Sure.
Def Leppard is a rock and roll band. The Strokes are a rock and roll band.
Yeah.
You know, like there's all kinds. Paleo Royale is a rock and roll band. So what is it that? But none of that music sounds the same.
No, and
so what is it that makes something rock and roll? In your mind,
in my mind,
because I'm trying to think of this too.
In my mind, I think it's a presentation.
Okay.
In a few ways. Now, I don't think that being rock and roll, I'm doing the quotes thing, is like punching your bandmate on stage after you drank 2 bottles of wine.
Yeah, I don't either.
I don't think it's.
I think that's a dick.
Yeah, I don't think rock and roll is showing up 2 hours late to a concert that you're headlining. Yeah. I don't think rock and roll is sleeping with women outside your marriage and having kids with them. I don't think rock and roll is sex, drugs, and rock. Sex and drugs. Like I don't. Those are things, but they're not necessarily rock and roll to me.
Sure. Do you feel like you can have rock and roll without hints or elements of all those things? I think rock and roll inherently is sexual.
Sure.
I just think it is. Rock and roll, the term
is
sex. You know, like that's rocking and rolling was way back when.
Yeah.
That was the term for it. I think there's a certain amount of sexuality that is a part of the essence of rock and roll, because I feel like there was an area that like guys were dressing in ways and pushing the envelope in ways that they weren't supposed to. Girls were speaking and dressing and acting in ways that they weren't supposed to. There's a very like anti-establishment, don't tell me how to be kind of way to it that strikes me as part of the heart of what rock and roll is.
I
think I think the reason that it's sexual is because a lot of repression is built around sex.
Sure.
So there's a stepping out of that. That's something to rebel against.
Maybe sexy is what's missing from rock and roll.
Maybe
there, and this could be several different. Like, think about it. Maybe there's something to that. You look at a band like Buck Cherry, and you're like, Buck Cherry's all like 60,
right?
But they're like, even today, they're just up on stage with either mesh shirts or see-through shirts or no shirts at all, and they down below they're showing off their cleft thing, and like they're still rock and roll. People still, but
so there's like I definitely agree with you. There's a showy element to it that I think leads into the entertainment part of it.
Yeah, I think that there, in that regard, maybe there is a sexiness that's missing from rock and roll.
Like Lenny Kravitz.
Yeah, sure.
Dude, that dude's sexy.
Yeah, right? He was just on.
Well, that's why I'm thinking of him.
Finishing Entourage.
Yeah, he was. Well, and he just got an award or performed at the Grammys, or not the Grammys,
Rock Hall,
something like that.
Oh, okay,
something there. But he's like, he's coming out and he's got the dreads back and he's shirtless and he's all cut and he's looking great and he's playing guitar and he's slinky and swanky and swaying around. Like there's an element to it that is just like, it feels. I think part of rock and roll is crossing the line just enough to be a little bit scandalous and salacious
Hmm.
without going all the way. So you're almost acceptable, but you're just over the line. Because I think that's, to me, that's always been the coolest place to be,
Sure.
right? You can still fit into society, but you don't totally fit in because
Sure.
you're a little bit dangerous, right? You're not the psycho
Yeah.
crazy metal guy in the back with the studs and the
Yeah.
like that's awesome too. But I feel like rock and roll is like over the line of decency, but just
Mm.
so you can always kind of be like, yeah, you can invite me and it might go great or I might burn the place down.
Yeah.
And there's that element of danger to it that maybe this is dangerous.
Yeah.
Maybe this is wrong. It's not overt.
I mean, there is actually like the term of rock and roll. Like I often just say rock music.
Mm-hmm.
And rock music, if you're gonna say that, rock music is a different thing, you
Mm-hmm.
know? For all intents and purposes, Weezer, right? Let's put
Sure.
Weezer,
Okay.
okay? Could their music be rock and roll?
I think so.
Sure.
Yeah.
Could their presentation be rock and roll? If we're talking about pushing boundaries, pushing lines, pushing
Well, I think that's an
I
element of
I
rock and roll.
I think that by that definition, not really.
Hash Pipe's a sexy song when you think of the beat.
Again, eye of the beholder kind of thing.
You know what I mean?
But
Like,
but if you're talking presentation, I would take a band like Pele Royale
mm-hmm.
and be like, that's rock and roll, and I'd take
Sure.
a band like Weezer and I'd be like, that's alt rock.
Okay.
That's rock music. I wouldn't put that rock and roll.
Yeah, they're not giving me the same danger vibes.
Right.
But neither is like
I mean,
Journey.
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
but is Journey a rock and roll band? Or are they a pop rock band? Maybe this is why genres exist.
This is probably why genres exist.
Because
Yeah, I
somebody was
mean,
like, I'm going to see a rock and roll band, and then they said a band, and somebody went, that's not rock and roll. That's like whatever adjective
right.
rock.
Yeah.
And then it just went crazy.
Yeah. Maybe. Very, very well could be. I mean, just the Beatles. The Beatles pushed boundaries in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Well, and
That's
the
rock and roll.
Beatles, the Beatles were people didn't want their kids listening to them.
Yeah.
You
The
know?
Stones, man, you know what?
That's a rock and roll band.
If you put them up on stage now, you wheel them up on stage now.
Dude, there ain't no wheeling. Mick Jagger does more on stage than you and I have done.
Yeah.
He does more in a half hour than either of us have done in the last 2 years.
Yeah. Yeah. Mick Jagger is still, like
he is rock and roll.